Hello, you're watching Addleshaw Goddard's Employment Channel on the 2nd of February 2012. The government has recently outlined wide-ranging proposals on executive pay, and today's news programme looks at these proposals in more detail and what they mean for organisations who employ executives going forward. Although no further details have yet been published, in his announcement last week, Vince Cable, the Secretary of State for Business Innovation and Skills, confirmed that 10 of the 12 recommendations set out in the report of the High Pay Commission published last November are to be implemented in practice or in spirit. Although an implementation timetable has not yet been published, it seems likely that, following consultation, many of the reforms will take effect for financial years that have already commenced. Michael Carter, a partner in our Employee Incentives Group at Addleshaw Goddard, comments on the proposals in more detail.
Thanks, Liz. The measures announced by Vince Cable on Monday on executive pay, I think, will be significant. We've only got his statement to go on at the moment, so watch this space. The proposed changes can be broadly put into three headings of binding voting, transparency and diversity. I think the biggest and most significant change is likely to be the binding votes on both future pay policy and termination payments and significant new service contracts. These proposals will need changes to legislation, so the government is going to consult on these, and they're also going to consult on whether the level of vote should be raised from 50% to 75%. Shareholders currently have a vote on remuneration policy, but the vote is on remuneration already earned and has no legal status. That vote currently only requires 50% voting in favour, and so 75% in itself would be a significant change. And many of the votes on remuneration reports over the last few years would have been voted down if the level of acceptances had to be 75%. This does raise the interesting legal question of the status of the arrangements should they be voted down. If the vote in relation to future policy is voted down, do the existing arrangements stay in place until new arrangements are given the green light by shareholders? These questions will need to be given considerable thought. As I mentioned, the government's also going to consult on giving shareholders a vote on termination payments of more than a year's salary and new contracts giving notice periods of more than 1 year. The concept of reward for failure has been around for a number of years, so actually having notice periods of in excess of 12 months is relatively rare. I think the significant change here is the vote in relation to termination payments, not dissimilar to a number of European countries. But again, it'll be interesting to see what the legal status of this is if a termination payment, which has been agreed between the Remuneration Committee and the company, is voted down by shareholders. Where does that leave the legal status of that arrangement? I think most of the changes actually deal with increasing transparency for shareholders and the wider public at large. So companies will have to change how they publish their remuneration reports. There will be both a backward-looking section in relation to past pay and a forward-looking section in relation to what policy is for the year ahead. In addition, companies will have to publish a single figure for what total pay is for their executive directors. I think it is fair to say that remuneration reports have become increasingly complex over the last 4 or 5 years, and so hopefully these changes will improve the clarity of these reports. Although good reports are already in many ways dealing with this forward-looking and backward-looking sections. The requirement to produce a single pay figure is, I think, a good idea and likely to focus the minds of executives and remuneration committees. However, without a standard methodology, it's going to be difficult for shareholders to compare remuneration across comparative companies, particularly if they have different financial years. And we don't know yet whether there is going to be a standardised methodology. Interestingly, companies are also going to have to publish how their shareholders have voted on remuneration. It's assumed that this is just for significant shareholders, those, for example, that own more than 3% of the company. Again, this will lead to greater transparency between those shareholders and the institutions and members that they are representing. Companies will also have to produce a distribution statement which will compare the levels of executive pay with other payments, for example, dividend payments. Requiring remuneration committees to justify the link between pay and performance should again be welcomed, and in fact many good remuneration reports already do this. And then finally, in relation to diversity, ministers will continue to encourage companies to increase diversity at board level voluntarily, and boards will be required to report their policy on boardroom diversity. In addition, the UK Corporate Governance Code will be changed to stop executive directors sitting on other companies' remuneration committees. This is an attempt to stop the perceived closed club of directors scratching their own backs. I'm not actually convinced that that works in practice, but also to try and encourage a wider group of individuals to consider becoming directors on board. I think no one can have any argument with the call for more diversity of UK PLC, and different experiences and perspectives create significant added value. In conclusion, we welcome the proposed changes that Vince Cable has announced. I think most of them are sensible and should lead to greater transparency and clarity around the topic of executive pay. I think it will, though, be interesting to see whether these changes will lead to a step change in pay levels. For this to occur, shareholders need to begin to take a more active role in the shaping of executive pay. And I think we have seen this starting to happen over the last 12 to 18 months. We also need to see companies and their remuneration committees and executives needing to understand that in the current economic conditions, executive pay is going to continue to be a key focus both for politicians and for the wider public at large.
Thanks, Michael. Our Employee Incentives Group have prepared an e-alert setting out the proposals in more detail, and you can access this by clicking on the link below the screen. If you have any queries on this at all, please feel free to contact your usual Addleshaw Goddard contact, Michael Carter directly, or via the Contact Us box to the right of the screen. So that's all for today from Addleshaw Goddard's Employment Channel. Thank you for watching and goodbye.